Welcome back, y'all, to another Plato's Dialogue. Here with, again, AP the Unshaven, as you can see, and NP the Shaven one, with the family history tie that has connected with our Irish past, the McCurley clan. So anyway.
Sect.
Yeah, sect. There you go. But let's talk about Protestantism again. And I kind of want to connect to the last lecture series conversation we did on that, which talked a lot about this Cobbett book.
Yes.
And the Reformation was defined in such a way that it was really a historical event that led to the dissolution or the devastation of the previous social order.
Yes.
And replaced it with a new one along what we would call a modern way of thinking, like the state as an absolute power, right? That kind of thing.
And the church as this thing that's either connected to it in a bad way, like Henry VIII, or need to be separated from it, like Americans.
Yeah, and we talked about the Reformation, especially with Henry and then the English stuff.
Yes.
But can you kind of extend that out and show how Queen Mary couldn't restore it and didn't restore it?
Right.
How this Reformation, which maybe you could call deformation of the social order, continued. You wanted to say something about that.
I think that's another one of Cobbett's interesting theses. Part of his thesis is that with James I and the thorough godly Reformation, he calls that Reformation the second.
Okay.
Right. And then later on in 1688 with the Glorious Revolution, he calls that Reformation the third. And in each case, he describes how there's still attempts by the leaders to snuff out the Catholics, the Catholic Church, to get rid of our Catholic inheritance. Right, and that's why he keeps calling them Reformations. But then he talks about the American Revolution as Reformation the fourth, the French Revolution as Reformation the fifth. Maybe the order's the other way. But he talks about those as branches of a tree. And he connects them all back to still the Catholic issue is burning.
Yeah.
But that's not told by normal history books.
No.
And so we have this Reformation continuing out these explosions. Right. This is just the English side. We're not talking about the continent. But by the time now, if we fast forward in the history, we're in the 1800s. Think about the 1800s and all the revolutions that occurred in Europe. Yeah. And then we get to the 1900s, we have world wars. I mean, it's just explosion after explosion after explosion. The social order, civilization, there's bombs going off in civilization.
Yes, it's the social order convulsing and the life that was put into that by Christ.
Yes.
Literally, that put this new life into
Christendom was
time
raised
and
up.
Space. Yeah. Yes, in the good Christian kingdom, it started. It was growing. It created this whole.
It wasn't
order.
Just an idea. No. Christendom was a physical, literal social order.
Yeah, the thing. As Belloc says. Yeah, I like that. But it's really convulsing with all this change. That's what you're saying these other Reformations were.
It's being degraded.
Okay, so I get what you're saying, and I really want to go into this lecture. I feel like this conversation, we went last one with like what the Reformation was historically. We tried to show what that was. And I want to talk now about the effects. This to me, it would be like the Reformation essentially, to me, according to what I understand, made God irrelevant. In our social order.
Our institutions. Right, or the structures of our society, like in politics, economics,
talk about that.
Science, universities, right? In all those spheres, you might say, those of society, right? Institutions that support all those different practices. Those are all what I would say infected with practical atheism, or they're all secularized in a certain way. God, who he is and what he's doing is irrelevant to what's going on in those
So you're
domains.
the question that I could think to slow down is, you mentioned a bunch of stuff. Practical atheism. So the Reformation produced practical atheism?
Yes. And what I say by practical atheism, again, I mean, we've brought up that term many times, but I mean, it sounds like an atheist, somebody who doesn't believe in God who's practical. No. I mean, it's a kind of idea that you might believe in God, but that's irrelevant. It's how you live out your life. You live out your life in a way that would look like God doesn't exist. Your life would look like somebody who is an atheist. Right? You do the things with respect to politics, economics, university systems, science, medicine, the same exact thing that an atheist would do. There's no difference in what you think or do.
I think of this in terms of this absurd story.
Okay.
Right. So let's say that Fox News comes up with a cool new technology, because technology is the answer to everything, right?
Absolutely.
And they come with this technology. They can consult anybody living or dead, right, about the race riots going on right now. So they get on their cool technological phone that they can, communicate like this. And they're going to call up, let's say, maybe someone who really knows a lot about human nature, right? Somebody that really understands human people and the human condition, that has lived it out and really thought it through really deeply. So they're going to call up a medieval monk.
Right.
Or St. Bonaventure.
That's definitely first on their list, the medieval
or
monk.
even if you didn't even say that whole thing, they're just going to call up Dr. Plato. Hey, we know you have a lot about philosophy and ethics and stuff. Can you talk to us about the race riots? What do you think? Tucker Carlson wants you on his show. It's absurd. Like God is irrelevant, and what these people that have been thinking about this good Christian
Somebody who
kingdom
deeply
are.
understands the Christian worldview
It's
and
irrelevant.
its effects at all levels,
Yeah.
like a monk.
Yeah. Well, I don't see theologians on
That's
TV.
crazy.
I don't see
Yeah.
philosophers on TV.
That's crazy.
I don't see monks, or really not much, at least for me.
Yeah.
Of course, I don't watch a whole lot of TV. But so when you say this practical atheism thing, I
Yes.
know a lot of people out there are thinking, wait a minute. To me, a practical atheist is someone who's living an atheistic life, who doesn't care about God.
Morality-wise.
Yeah, morality-wise. Yeah. What do you? Is that what you mean?
No, I mean that they might be a good Christian, meaning they don't commit adultery, right? They follow the gospel as close as they can in their personal private life, right? But in the terms of how they relate to all the institutions of society, right? Politics, the political realm, the technological realm, the economic realm, they don't do anything different than the rest of the people that are atheists. So it's not that they're atheistic morally speaking, right? It's that their societal interaction in these institutions, they accept the same assumptions that the atheist would like them to
God's
have.
not included in any answers to our real life,
Right.
our real problems. Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Like if a practical atheist, maybe a good Christian morally, could go to the voting booth, right, and think, here's my options. It's this or that.
It could be like a good Christian who thinks, I can't talk about the Bible or Christianity or God about any policy. I just have to kind of parrot what Fox News says, for example, or some CNN. I can't really bring my faith into the public square, but I'm a good person, so I'm a good Christian. I follow the gospel.
Yeah.
That might be a practical atheist, for example. Okay. But I'm saying that a real Christian should be a radical. We need structural change. All these structures of society are infected with this godless, right, practical atheism, that God and who He is and who we are in relationship to Him, what He's done, Jesus Christ is King, all that isn't something we bring into these areas. It's cool if you have that on the side. It's like you being a Christian is something you do on the weekends, like the other guy goes to bingo club. Right. It's just something you do in your private life on the side. And that's, I'm the big, mover and shaker in politics or economics or technology. And it's cool if you're a Christian, but whatever, that's something private for you. Okay. I'm glad you're a good person. You don't commit adultery.
So
good
practical atheist privatizes religion.
That's one way you could put it, yeah.
Okay, that makes sense to me. These spheres, you just mentioned like different institutions, spheres.
Let me just be stronger. It's not that they just privatize religion. Okay. It's that they don't want to make the structures and institutions, the habits and traditions in our culture Christian. Okay. It's not just they privatize, it's they don't do anything to change the structures to make them Christian.
How could let's pick one so you can talk about that. Yeah. What's a structure?
So politics is a great one, or economics.
Okay. Let's talk about economics, because that can connect maybe to some of what we did with ownership. Definitely. How is God and His kingdom and His truths that He's revealed about man and the world not included in economics today, but it should be? Give me a way it should be. How is it not, and how should it be?
Right. So when we think about economic questions, we think according to the red feed or the blue feed. Okay. Right? And we
capitalist or socialist?
Yes, capitalist or socialist, and that's the paradigm we work with. And so when we're working out a solution, these are the ideas and these are the structures in which the questions are asked.
Yeah. Do we need more Keynesian economics, or do we need more Hayekian economics?
Something like that.
Or something like that.
Exactly. And then you might be a Christian, go read your Hayek because you want to be, right wing. You want that answered. Yeah. Right. And so that's what your source is. Your source isn't something much more radical. Like, wait a minute, this whole spectrum is based on a view of man that you actually reject as a Christian. Right. That's what I mean.
Okay. I think that's good. I think so. So you're talking about different spheres, and you were telling me about this book that you're reading by another Protestant with that, which I thought personally that was interesting. A Protestant was criticizing himself, and I've heard you and some of your friends talk about this grave digger thing. Yeah. Grave digger hypothesis.
It's called the grave digger hypothesis.
And it was a Protestant, or Protestants were saying it. I don't know where it came from.
So the sociologist I was thinking of, his name is Craig Gay. Okay. And he identifies himself as an evangelical conservative Christian. Okay. And that's where I first learned about this idea, this gravedigger hypothesis, which is a hypothesis in sociology that Protestant Christianity in particular sows the seeds for its own destruction. They dig their own grave. In other words, if the Protestant social order, right, and I'm getting broad brushing, right, is fulfilled, then Protestantism becomes completely irrelevant to it. It's kicked out of society. It kicks itself out of society.
I would say, just for hearing you, the first thing I thought is that's already happening for sure, because I see the liberal Protestant groups, whether it's the PCUSA or something. They literally are an extension of left-wing American politics. Right. They're not like speaking deeper than that.
The gospel has been co-opted by that social agenda.
They're following state actions.
Yes.
Yeah. Or cheering on certain state solutions. Right. That's correct?
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
So what this guy Craig Gay does in his book, it's called The Way of the Modern World, and why are we tempted, Christians? Why are we tempted to live as if God didn't exist? What makes us tempted to live that way?
How do we?
Even if we're doing moral things, we're not like, we're not committing adultery and we're not stealing and all that. Why are we tempted to live as if God didn't, to think he's irrelevant in all these domains? And that's where he identifies what he calls the modern world. Okay. And the modern world is these ideas, you might say, or these structures that inform these different domains of society. And those, he says, right, are all practical atheism.
Now, but we're talking about, now, how does that connect to the Reformation?
Yes.
Because you're trying, I mean, to me, we just talked about the Reformation. Yes. So how does the stuff you just said connect to the Reformation?
Right. So I think, again, of that moment where Cobbett says when Henry VIII, he's sort of, I think you can generalize this to the other Reformations, right, on the continent, is that when the supremacy vacuum was created, it had to be filled. And what it's filled by is the modern state, the modern nation state ultimately.
So
right?
A new structure comes in.
A new structure where there's absolute authority for all levels of human society, right? That is dictated by the top of the food chain. At the top of the food chain isn't Jesus Christ, king of society.
Yeah.
I mean, think of it this way: the Christian story. I mean, I think all Christians should buy this. I don't have to give some big Catholic apologetic here.
Yeah, yeah.
Jesus Christ came. He was prophet, priest, and king. He was really king, right? And he started a community, right? A society.
Yes.
Right? And he authorized people, the apostles, to develop that society, to form it in a certain way with certain structures according to certain rules or laws, right? And that eventually got developed into a real concrete polity.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's what in the Belloc story, when he has the Roman centurion walking through town, and he sees the church. The church is a separate, independent, so to speak, functioning society with a law and a hierarchy and a way of living and a discipline and strictly held dogmatic beliefs, right? And they saw that at one point in time as a threat.
Absolutely.
Because it really didn't matter to this group if Rome was persecuting them or not. They stayed the group. And then
they had their own identity.
Yes.
Right? They had their own structures.
Yeah. Yes.
To live together as a society, as a polity.
And that structure is meant to be the structure that we live in.
Yes, because the leaders of that structure were authorized by Jesus Christ, right? Were given his kingly authority, delegated, right? They're not themselves Jesus, but they speak for him. He authorized them in that moment with the keys. Right?
So we are living in that. That is real. That's now.
That is
That's
real.
The church.
That's right now. And what many Protestants do, when I was a Protestant, Jesus as king meant he's like king of your heart, like king of your personal devotions. Yeah, not king of society. He can't inform like what policy we should have, about immigration, what policy we should have about warfare, like whether we should,
international debt.
That's irrelevant. You can't consult Jesus Christ as king for that. Whatever. That's just spiritual stuff for you personally.
Yeah. Again, bifurcation.
Yes.
Again, you got public versus private.
Yeah.
You said earlier their privatization. That the Reformation, it does privatize religion because it gives all the rights of Jesus Christ as king and his kingdom to the church, to the state. Yeah. Henry took that and made that.
But what I want to say as a privatized religion isn't really religion.
Okay.
Right? It's not the true religion anyway. It's not Christianity. That's not private. Think of N.T. Wright.
Yeah.
And how the things he says about that are really good about the New Testament.
Yeah.
How, when Christ came and said what he did, he was saying, in effect, Caesar's not God, I am. That is socially revolutionary, politically revolutionary.
Yes.
Right? That isn't just, hey, I've got some ideas for you to live in your spiritual life as Rome continues to do its thing.
Yes.
Right?
Which is super powerful. Again, I'm going to keep bringing up Belloc, but it's really, to me, it was formative. Where he has this story where there's this party going on in Rome. Remember this? I don't know if you remember this. There's this party going on in Rome. And he's saying this to explain what the nature of the church is, the nature of Christianity is, right? And he goes on and he says that there's many people, there's Stoics, there's Epicureans, there's people into mystery religions at this party. And there's a guy who's a wealthy person who learned about Jesus Christ in the Gospels. And he thinks, this guy's awesome. He has some great stuff, right? And he's talking about it. And the persecutors then roll through town, right? They come into this party. And would they persecute the person that was all about this, I love Jesus Christ, he's such an interesting guy and all that? Or who would they get? Who would they persecute?
Right.
And the answer is no one.